noticing instances, and I kept just kind of taking note of repeatability of issues. I read a neat article about 10 years ago called the knowing-doing gap. And this process consultant, who was a very famous and a very effective consultant, had done business turnarounds and takeovers and revamps and restructures and bailed businesses out of problems. And he said every time he went into a business to do a turnaround or do a major consulting job, he found that there was a knowing-doing gap. He said everybody I talked to in that company knew what the problem was, knew what the issues were, knew what should be done to fix it, but nobody would do anything about it. So the gap between knowing what to do and doing it is the biggest gap. That's where consultants live. Consultants never come in with the answer. Consultants always come in with a question. Tell me what's happening. Tell me what you think the problem is. Where did that come from? How long has that been going on? Why now didn't you fix that? Not my job, you know. And so they bridge the gap between knowing and doing. Well, I found that the larger the knowing-doing gap, the more time and energy it takes to fix any problem. The shorter the distance between the knowing-doing gap, that's where entrepreneurs kind of live in that whole process, you know, for the most part. The easier it is to fix and identify. And I kept noticing repeatability. The number of times the same problem came up. The number of times it was the same issue. And amazingly, I'm making up this number, 93.2176% of the time, okay? It had to do with integrity. It had to do with the ability of the organization and the performance of the organization not being aligned. And there was always a whole lot more ability than performance. And it was because there was nothing malicious. There was not anybody trying to kill anybody. It's just that people were not on the same page. Somebody would say, would you do that by Tuesday? I'll handle it, no problem. And then it just didn't happen. So the gap between what I say I'll do and what I do seems to be the biggest gap that I found in business over the years. And that's kind of what got me on this whole idea of where do you start with this integrity process? And I find that you really start with either the board of directors or the executive team. And if there is integrity among the executive team, then you have to build a separate set of integrity among the middle management team. Not between the executives and the middle management, but there has to be integrity among the middle management team. Then there has to be integrity among the organization. So,
do you think it might be something to do with answering that question up there on the very top, which is why? Why are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah. I will tell you that I would like to tell you that the lower you go into an organization, the less why you learn. But I will tell you that in organizations that have a knowing-doing gap, at the very top, there is no understanding of why. There is an understanding of what now. Let me give you a practical example that's not intended to be a flippant answer. But the worst thing I've ever found in my life are organizations where the strategy is set by the accountants. Holy shit. There are no worse strategists that I've ever found in my life. Okay? They simply tell you whether or not you're in the ballgame or not. They tell you, they tell you what the score is, how well we're doing, but you should never ask people like that to tell you what you should be doing. That's why you need a sales marketing perspective to have a vision, to have a dream of what we can become. So that gap seems